Yeah, I think it's exciting. That's $30 or $40 an acre advantage too. Our biggest fear here is canola is very new to this area, and we're still learning a lot about it. But I think the experts say you really optimally want to seed the canola the last few days of September, between the 25th, I think, and the 1st October. But I think it can be seeded all the way up to the end of October. And I think the jury is still out on exactly when is the best time to sow canola in our area. It's just a new crop here, and so we're still learning. We currently only have one field of it, and I had a neighbor seed it for me. I just didn't want to invest in equipment to seed it with no more than I was going to have. So he was kind enough to seed a field for me. And he's also going to harvest the field. It's beside some. He's got a large acreage of canola, and so we'll get to see how it performs on our farm, and and basically he'll do a lot of the process for me. I'll just get to witness it, and so it'll be good. It'll be a good trial, and we'll get to learn some about it. Uh, Hopefully, will be a future in it for us here. It just will allow us to diversify an additional risk management tool. So any crop you can add to the rotation too is good. It just gives you some different biology to have in your field, and so you get to use different chemistries than we're currently using. And so any added tool to the toolbox we feel like is a good thing, and it'll also give us some flexibility when, like currently when we harvest wheat, we are trying to do it in a couple week period, and canola is supposed to come off around a week to 10 days sooner than the wheat, so it would allow us to harvest sooner in June, and like instead of maybe having a humongous wheat crop, we could have a half canola and half, we could have the same acres in double crop, but where we'd be harvesting the entire month of June instead of cramming it into a 2 week period, make our wheat crop a little smaller, make our canola crop a little bigger, and that way we can harvest the entire month of June pretty well and have just a logistic advantage over just having one crop, which is wheat that we're trying to get out in a 10-day period. Currently I think mine was priced at $12.20, so I think the canola market, since it was contracted, has slid off a bit. I think it's in the $11.50 range, and if what I saw is like if the wheat averaged 90 to 100 and the canola averaged 50, they would be roughly the same net. So that would be an excellent corn crop and just an average canola crop, and you'd still net out more with the average canola crop than you could with a fantastic wheat crop. So a little bit of advantage there too, just because you net out a little bit higher. You'd actually get your beans sowed a little bit quicker, and that time in June, like you're right at the crunch time of being able to make a full or a short crop. So if seeding the very first week of June, your beans probably make 3 to 4 bushels more than by the third or fourth week of June, and that's $30 or $40 an acre advantage too. So maybe a couple of advantages with canola. I think our biggest fear here is the canola, gets to a certain point and frost out, and because we can, even though we're warm here, we can swing very cold, and if the canola is not protected by a snowfall, which we don't get a lot here to begin with. I think we had maybe an inch last year. It did happen to coincide with our coldest stretch, but if we had a cold snap without a blanket of snow, we could lose our canola to frost. So probably our biggest risk with that crop is frost out. The wheat can also frost out too. It's just not as likely. Like, it takes a super cold stretch weather to frost wheat out. Generally, it's pretty hardy. Where I don't think, a, a really significant cold stretch of canola, it wouldn't take quite the, like I think, you'd really need in the single digits to frost wheat out, where canola may frost out in the teens or 20s for an extent if it was there for an extended stretch. So the canola is going to come off, they say 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks sooner than the wheat crop will. So I think they say, canola seeded in late September, early October will come off around the first week of June. So maybe a few days sooner than our wheat comes off. The canola, if we have a future in it here, if we like what we see out of the field that we have of it, we'll seed it with a 1790, which is the same seeder that we use to plant our soybeans with in the spring. So that'll be a nice efficiency for us. We'll be able to use right now we use those 1790s to seed a cover crop rye with on the single crop acres in the fall, and we'll use it to seed soybeans with in the spring. And then if we could seed canola with it, it'll give us a third thing to use the piece of equipment for, and that's a good thing for us. We like to get as much use out of the stuff that we own as possible, so that'll be an advantage too. So you can harvest with this header. Basically what you have to have additionally is canola is a very tall crop, and you're harvesting an entire plant, and the plant wants to come down the length of the head and lay on the back of the header. And so with like this head, they will add an additional auger down the length of the tube, and when the canola gets cut and it falls into the head, the auger will just allow, along with the draper belt, the speeding of the crop to the center of the combine, so you can evenly feed the machine, and you get a nice even crop mat coming into the combine where you get a.
And John Deere makes the attachment.
Yeah, you can buy an aftermarket attachment as well, but John Deere actually makes an auger that goes down the length of this head. It's basically just plug and play. You just bolt the hardware on, plug a couple of sensors in, and it's ready to go. So, I think that auger is about $9,000 on this head. So we have a 50-foot head. You'd need, I think, 2 20-foot lengths of auger and the bearings and brackets for it. So you're looking at pretty pricey unit to go on the head, on an already expensive head. And that's why, with no more than we have, we're going to ask the guy that seeded it to also harvest it. And he's been very gracious and said that he would, so that'll help us out. We don't have enough canola to justify buying something like that for our combine, so not yet. We'll see if it's going to work here, and once we see that, then we'll worry about adding the equipment we need to do the crop.
Yeah, do you expect to be profitable first go around?
I don't really expect to be profitable the first go around. I think it's more of just a learning experience to see if we can that it can be a successful crop for us. We'll learn a lot from the first go around, but by the time I pay to have it seeded and pay to have it harvested, there won't be a lot left for profit. It'll just be more of a tool to learn with. I think after I see it one time, kind of learn a little bit about the crop, I think by the second crop I can be profitable with it. There will be somewhat of an equipment, efficiency deal, because you're going to spend, if you spend $6,000 or $7,000 getting your planter set up, and then $7 to $10 to get your combine set up, that's a significant investment in additional machinery that you're going to need. But if you grow a pretty sizable canola crop, that's not something that you can't overcome. So I feel like if we learn quite a bit agronomically about the crop, and we feel like it can be we can yield at a successful level, The equipment thing's not something that we can overcome. We have the base equipment. It's just adding those attachments that we need to really get the crop in like it should be.
Yeah, okay.
I think canola here, traditionally they had used it for cooking oil in the past, and so what crops have uh, what canola and rapeseed crops have been grown here in the past have been used for the cooking oil market, which I think is mostly a saturated market to begin with, which means there's already been enough produced currently to supply the market. The new market that's opening up is Bunge, North American, Chevron are partnering together to make a crush plant where the canola oil will actually be used as renewable fuel, and that plant is set to open at the Port of Louisiana, I want to say in 2026. So they want 2 million acres roughly seeded in a geographical region. I think maybe a little set, maybe from Obion, Tennessee. I don't know exactly where they want the acres from, but or maybe somewhere in Mississippi up into southern Illinois, and they are going to try to get 2 million acres situated in that area close to the river ports, so then they can load the canola onto the barge and get it to the Gulf to where the crush plant's going to be. So basically, it's a logistical thing, and the new market is going to be the renewable diesel. So it's new, and basically the crush plant is not open yet. They're just trying to get people on board with growing the crop currently. So they are buying the product and and helping with logistics of the product, but they're going to ship it to Europe for now. And basically, what they're just getting farmers on board with learning how to grow the product, seeing the logistical challenge of it, and that way, whenever the plant does get open, they already have an established, experienced grower to produce the product they need to supply their plant. So it's pretty shrewd business on their part. They were thought ahead about this. They knew that the growers here weren't experienced with the crop, need a few years to get experience, so then they can supply their plant with the product they need consistently. And so, they started the program out small, I think 2 seasons ago, with just a handful of people. And then each year until the plant opens, they're going to expand the amount of people growing the product. And eventually it'll be hopefully a 2 million acre crop here in this region, which is another much needed commodity. We only really have 3 or 4 here in this basically region, so an additional one would be much welcomed to our rotation. Definitely, I always am interested to see a new crop, to learn about it, and yeah, I think it's exciting it's always exciting to learn something new, and it just gives us another tool in our toolbox. So mitigates a little risk, allows something else to be in our fields than what we're currently growing, and then you can't ever stop learning. I don't feel like it just should expand our knowledge of how to grow. Like we'll probably pick something up in canola that makes us a better farmer, farming soybeans or corn or whatever else. So anything that you can learn, I think, is good for your career. There's some niche corns that grow here. That you'll have some popcorn growers, some growers of white corn, which is a food grade corn for like tortillas. There's also some growers in southern Illinois, let's see, the Boot Hill, Missouri, and West Tennessee that grow cotton. We could grow cotton here if we so chose. We haven't up to this point. We don't know how to grow cotton, so but it is an option. And rice can also be grown here, so we don't grow rice either, but that we do have some neighbors here very close by in southern Illinois and the Boot Hill, Missouri, that's growing rice as well. So there's also areas Kentucky now that are growing produce, so we could we could choose to grow some produce. We just right now we're not set up with the manpower and labor that would be needed to produce a produce, to like the fresh produce. We're just not set up for that. So we currently just use the commodity crops, and you know, maybe one day we get into something like rice or cotton, especially if our corn and bean markets continue to deteriorate. But for now, we're just in the commodities, um, and probably for the foreseeable future, that's where we'll be at. So yeah, canola is definitely welcome. Just it adds to our portfolio, which is a good thing. I'm excited to see it bloom. When it blooms, it turns the field yellow,
Oh, really?
and yeah, I think it'll be like a very scenic crop to look at. So I'll always like to look at a brown wheat field that's blowing in the wind. It'll be neat to see like that bright yellow canola all blooming at the same time in the field. I think that's pretty exciting to see. They tell me, and I'm just learning about canola, but I know it, like canola starts out as a small rosette, which is basically a little clump plant, and its stem has to be has to elongate to begin with, and if there's a lot of like fodder, which is like plant material on the ground, the stem can elongate too much, and so it lengthens off the ground a little bit, trying to grow out of that fodder, and it exposes itself for frost, and it can frost out easier. And so, what they're looking for with canola is a very clean seed bed. And generally, here at Double Crop, we have been double cropping behind our corn acre. So we're harvesting our corn, but our corn comes off fairly early here, and so we can see that wheat back into it. Well, that's a problem for canola because you have all that corn fodder on the ground, and you really have to work your ground good to be able to bury the fodder enough to get the canola up without it being around all that fodder. And so we decided to go into go behind soybeans with it. There's not as much fodder out there. We like to no-till. We can kick our residue out to the side with the row cleaner, and it leaves the seed bed pretty clean for the canola. And you'll actually be, you'll be soybeans, canola, soybeans, which is not ideal. You'd really want to be out of soybeans again. But if you so chose and the season was right, you could go soybeans, canola, and then behind the canola plant a late crop of corn. So that's an option too. But that's a challenge because here in our area we have very loamy soil, which tends to erode very badly. We're also on slope, and so if you work ground down here, to the point where you're burying your fodder, you're setting yourself up for one of those eroding rainfalls that you never want to see. If canola's not established yet, when you get the big rain, that's when you can get in trouble and get big time erosion on your field, which you don't want to see. And for that reason, we selected to go into a cut bean field scenario where we wouldn't have to work the soil. We could just brush the bean plumage back a little bit, get the canola plant established without the fodder being around, but also without working the soil. So that was kind of our thinking around it. And we don't know if it's right or wrong, but we'll see, I guess.
Right.
The one advantage also that you'll get in a soybean field is soybeans are actually nitrogen fixing, so they produce nitrogen, and you'll generally see some pounds, somewhere around 30 to 50 pounds of organic nitrogen in the field after a soybean crop. And canola is a nitrogen loving plant, so you have canola that needs nitrogen, you have soybeans that actually have produced nitrogen, and so the soybeans have already paid for part of your input by growing the crop during the summer period of the year, harvesting it, there's organic nitrogen out there, and that canola can then scavenge that nitrogen, and you've increased your efficiency because part of your inputs have been paid for by growing your soybean crop that you've also been able to sell. So, versus corn, that is a nitrogen loving plant, it actually takes nitrogen to produce corn, it doesn't produce its own. So if you seeded canola behind corn, not only would you have a fodder problem, but you don't have any nitrogen available for the canola to get started. You have to provide an alternative, synthetic source, which is just spread or streamed commercial nitrogen, which is expensive. So hope you enjoyed our YouTube about learning about canola. We're learning as along with everybody else. So appreciate you watching. Like, share, and subscribe.